Welcome, bipolar winter comrades. We are on a journey to reveal the prophecies of the world's largest and most powerful doomsday cult to usher in the end of all life on Earth. Here, we engage you to help expand the army of responders. We must enlist the intelligence services, military, and media in every country on Earth to thwart this doomsday cult's unfolding plans to execute the world's end. You have reached the podcast of all podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Bipolar Winter podcast. It is January 18th, 2024. I am Amy Bonova, and I'm going to be asking a question from one of our viewers to the author of Bipolar Winter, Samuel David Steiner. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, and please share this with your friends and family. So the question from the viewer is, I'm going to read it off this paper here. How back in May of 2023 did you know that the whole world would soon appear to be demonstrating against Jews or the state of Israel, which would remind people of the anti-Jewish sentiment present in Germany just before World War II? Before we hear the answer from the author, let's roll a short clip.
If I had been alive a year before the Holocaust, no one would have listened. No one would have believed it. In fact, even in Kristallnacht, that no one even believed it was going to happen after that. Very few people believed it was going to actually get as bad as it did. And I have to make the point that worldwide, this church's organization hierarchy, the Shemitah Advent Rite of Freemasonry, has planned and does plan to roll out the same kind of scenario, conditioning the whole world to be able to be anti-Jewish on a level unseen in Germany, unseen. I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how they'll do it, but money buys incredible amounts of talent and ability. And so subconscious avenues are being used to be able to start setting the stage for a global anti-Jewish attack.
I remember when that conversation happened in April and when the video was created in May. And I can certainly understand why a viewer or any viewer would want to know the answer to the question. So Samuel, can you please answer that for us?
It's an important question. I don't want to say that I knew exactly when and how the attack would begin, but to understand the answer, you have to understand the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, from its beginnings, has been one of the most anti-Catholic and anti-Jewish organizations in the world. This is why, if the media and the public, the governments, are able to get the Seventh-day Adventist Church to start interpreting and exposing all of the pamphlets, all of the magazines, all of the books, everything that was put out prior to World War II, the public will begin seeing that the Seventh-day Adventist Church basically was against the Jesuit order, that is the intellectual community involved in Catholicism, a religious order, and they were very much against the Jews. And why? Because the Seventh-day Adventist Church teaches, of course, that the Jewish nation was cursed and that they are now the new Israel. So it is imperative for their membership to be taught that the Jews are going through whatever they go through because they are a cursed people. And that the United States government in their teaching is the second great Satan, or the second beast in the book of Revelation. They also teach that the Catholic Church itself is the first great beast, or the first great Satan in the book of Revelation, and will deceive the whole world. But the power over the world that the United States government ends up having will be handed over to the Catholic Church just before the coming of, or their return in their teachings of Jesus in the clouds of heaven. Now, in the Jewish calendar, we are very close to a time where the Messiah has to appear. During the last 6,000 years, there has been a hope that the Messiah would appear and manifest and help redeem Israel. And all of these years, there's been a hope and an intention to help make that happen. Now that we're living at the end of the 6th millennia in the Jewish calendar, the Messiah has to appear before the 7th millennia begins, the Sabbath millennium. And that is a subject all to itself. But the Seventh-day Adventist Church also teaches that just before their Messiah, Jesus, appears in the clouds of heaven to take them to heaven for 1,000 years, and after the 1,000 years return to this planet where the New Jerusalem will be here on earth. Their teaching is that they will become suspect, that the world will look at them as someone who's creating problems for the planet, mischief makers. They will actually become hated in their teachings. And the United States government in their teachings will actually start persecuting them, and in many cases arresting them, and in some cases even putting them to death. So this is a very severe teaching. This is a very severe teaching for a child to hear from early on. Millions of children are taught this, and the emotional trauma it creates probably can't really be put into words, but because children who believe their parents and are taught to believe the leaders of the church their parents belong to actually internalize and believe these teachings and prepare to live a life that's willing to give up their life rather than to change any of their behavior or any of their teachings. And so, just before World War II, the Seventh-day Adventist Church began publishing pamphlets, magazines, periodicals, and they had what's called call porters going door to door, or standing on streets, corners, selling these pamphlets or magazines. These are book distributors. The word is, I think, a French word that they use is call porter. And for several years prior to Hitler's rise to power, their magazines was actually asking that the German people begin supporting this vegetarian, this Adolf Hitler, this person who needed to clean up the country from any Jesuit influence or Jewish presence and influence, and purify the blood of Germany. This is incredibly powerful. If you're running for chancellor and you're needing a support group, there can't be a bigger and better support group than what happened for years before World War II began. And that's why I believe it's imperative that foundations intellectual communities, organizations in government that study this type of thing asked the Seventh-day Adventist Church to produce every document in Europe or Germany that was involved in supporting this type of thought. The idea that they were expressing a desire to see people vote Adolf Hitler into power. In fact, after World War II, the Secret Service had to come to the Seventh-day Adventist Church leadership and tell them they were soon going to be in a lot of trouble if they didn't get rid of the last Nazis they were still working with. He said every other organization has abided by what we've, are demanding, but you aren't, and we're going to, withdraw your status as a nonprofit or as a religious organization and actually prosecute you if you don't abide by our request. And I think below this video, there's a link to a podcast where you'll be able to hear a Seventh-day Adventist historian discuss much of this. Now, this was a practice run. World War II was a practice run because World War II did not make the whole world turn on the Adventist people or the Adventist Church. And in the teachings of Ellen G. White, the prophetess of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in her teachings, there is a clear understanding that before Jesus returns, the Seventh-day Adventist Church and its people will become persecuted and hated. And the church members many times are asking, how could that possibly be? We're good people. We own one of the largest chains of hospitals doing good for communities all over the world. We own one of the largest private school systems in the world. So our children are, for the most part, very well educated. We live good, clean lives. We are morally good people. In fact, the Seventh-day Adventist Church members are very good people. And so you have this, I guess, up to 22, 23, maybe 25 million people now worldwide that are considered baptized Seventh-day Adventist church members. And many, many children being raised to become baptized and church members who are active and actively supporting the church in its position. So the church member has to wonder, what would make the world hate us? And the truth is, in the Bipolar Winter trilogy, there is in this novel presented an organization called the Shemitah Advent Rite of Freemasonry. Now, many people believe that there was a rogue group of Freemasons that basically founded the Seventh-day Adventist Church and was a strong support group around Ellen White and her husband, James White, in the early years of the church. And this is, in fact, true. But in the novel, it goes a step further and it shows that the Masonic organization, a rogue Masonic organization, basically still to this day runs the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and its purpose is to make sure that the prophecies of Ellen White are fulfilled, either naturally or self-fulfilled if need be. And so, as we've gotten closer to what the timeline says is the end of this millennium, before the seventh millennium begins, time is running out. And so in the novel, you have this Shemitah Advent Rite of Freemasonry running the Seventh-day Adventist Church, deciding it's time for us to start using our wealth and our influence. Our wealth, meaning Seventh-day Adventist Church is probably in the top 50 wealthiest organizations in Dun & Bradstreet in the world. And this is a very wealthy organization who has the ability to make a choice to decide to start reaching out or sending messages through their contacts to leaders of organizations who could worldwide do what in Germany was done just before World War II. And that is start turning the world not only against the Catholic Church and against Jesuits, but again, turning the world against Jews. And if they find the right terrorist groups, or if they find the right religious groups, or if they find the right communist organizations or ideologies that teach idolatry, the point is, if they find the right people and can influence them to use their wealth of influence to get masses of people in the street, then it looks and appears as if the whole world is turning against the Jews. And what happened on October 7, of course, everyone I think agrees is horrific, but you have to understand that if you have an intention, a desire to see this kind of anti-Jewish organization worldwide attacking Israel and Jews, and ultimately hoping that they will then start turning against Christians, white Christians specifically, white Catholics specifically, then you have to ask yourself, what are these teachings? And you can begin getting a little bit of a bird's eye view by going to a book and reading the whole book called The Great Controversy. The Great Controversy Between Christ and Satan is a book written by Ellen G. White and is basically a book that helps explain what the Adventist people have been taught and why they are being taught to become a part of an organization that is going to become hated just before they and people that are righteous, or whose hearts are right with God, are taken up when Jesus returns into the clouds of heaven and taken to heaven for 1,000 years. Now, there's a lot more to this answer, but I think for right now, this gives you an introduction, and I'll try to put a few links below this video that will help expand some of the understanding of the question as well as the answer. I hope this helps. Thank you.